Hi, welcome to the DeNovocastrians Podcast. Today we're interviewing Samsara. Samsara are an envirotech company creating infinite recycling to end plastic pollution.
Okay, so might just start with the basics. Can we get you guys to introduce yourselves and the company?
Okay, I'm Paul Riley, CEO and founder of Samsara.
And I'm Rosie. I'm a PhD student at Samsara. I'm in my first year of PhD.
And yeah, so how did the company start, and can we get some of your primary values?
So the company evolved from a working group at Main Sequence Ventures, where ourselves, Woolworths, CSIRO, were trying to identify a solution for mixed plastics. And mixed plastics being one of Woolworths' primary concerns and primary complaints from their customers on a daily basis. We did a tech scan internationally to try and identify and scope available technologies, none of which we felt were appropriate. They either were downcycling, they were thermal technologies that were inappropriate. In some of those technologies, those waste to energy technologies, the carbon footprint that you create from the process is probably more damaging than the plastics itself. Towards the end of that scan of technologies, we identified some work that was being done at ANU around the enzymatic depolymerization of plastics, and at that stage it was just a polyester enzyme, but the technology was a platform technology that was allowing for the development of enzymes to address multiple plastics. And in talking with ANU, there was the scope for that technology to ultimately resolve the mixed bale of plastics or mixed plastics, which was what our key objective was. So we pulled the various stakeholders together. So that was Woolworths, ANU, Main Sequence Ventures, and myself, and we founded the company about 2 years ago. Our goal with the small amount of capital that we raised was to actually reach a proof point of depolymerizing some plastic and recreating that plastic to prove that the technology was viable, which we managed to do within the first 3 or 4 months of the foundation of the company.
Covered a couple of our questions there. Yeah, that was a really good.
Sorry if this was covered, but could you tell us a bit more? So it's a solution to plastic pollution. Could you tell us about how serious and wide-reaching that pollution is?
Pollution is, there's been 9 billion tonnes of plastic manufactured since plastic was invented, and those 9 billion tonnes exist in the environment somewhere. They haven't gone away. They're in a river, in the ocean, in a landfill, or they've been burnt and created more carbon. So all of that pollution and plastic still exists. And there's no current resolution for that. You look at mechanical recycling, you get to put your bottles through it a couple of times, and then that product ends up in landfill anyway. You can't. You've got no solution for a lot of the other plastics. You've got no solution for fast fashion, and we believe that our technology, in being able to address multiple plastics, allows that waste that's currently going to landfill to be captured and turned into a valuable resource. And this is the key to when we talk about our mission being, to end plastic pollution. The key to ending plastic pollution, we believe, is that you need to create value where there is no value. So if you just look at the container deposit scheme in New South Wales, for example, there's 84,000 tonnes of plastic now collected by simply putting value on each bottle, a 10-cent value on each bottle. There isn't the same value applicable to, for example, the tomato punnet or the green bottle or the meat tray or the bakery tray. Our technology now creates value for that plastic. And by creating value for that plastic, it gets sorted. And once it's sorted, we can use it and turn it back into infinitely recyclable plastic. So that's the key: create value for the plastic, and you're a long way down the road to eliminating plastic waste.
Yeah, awesome. So I think you're starting to touch on it there, but like you said, I think we see plastic, and especially single-use plastic, as waste. But you guys want to change that perspective. Could you tell us how
So
you are changing that perspective?
So I don't want Samsara is part of the solution, right? And I think there are four legs to this. There's first of all elimination. If we never had to see another piece of single-use plastic again, then I'd be ecstatic. We don't need single-use plastic. Then you've got reuse, and people should be reusing, and then you've got redesign. And in that situation where none of those apply, we become the fourth leg, which is infinite recycling, the ability to recycle plastic forever without degrading the quality of the plastic, recycle it in a manner which is environmentally sustainable. The fact that our technology is low energy usage, low chemical usage, most of the consumables are recycled through our process, means that we do no further harm in terms of creating new plastic. So that's the way we see ourselves fitting into that ecosystem.
Cool. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah. Now let's talk more science and tech now, which is kind of my favorite kind of subject.
This is Rosie.
So broadly, what is your technology / solution to this problem? So what are you actually a bit more technical? What are you guys doing?
Shall I take this one, Paul?
You can take that one.
I'll do my best. Essentially, what we're doing is we're able to break down so plastic are polymers. They're made of repeating monomeric units. And what we're able to do is use enzymes to break those bonds between the monomeric units so that we can then collect those monomers that are then able to be made into new plastic that is just as perfectly good as virgin plastic that's never been recycled before.
That's really cool. That's a really good answer. Thank you.
Really great. Can I ask a question? These enzymes that you're using, are they coming from organisms, or have they been mutated and stuff like that?
Yeah, they're in the computer.
Yeah. So part of why the Jackson Lab, which is so Colin Jackson's the lead of the Jackson Lab based at the ANU, and one of the techniques the Jackson Lab has really not pioneered, because we're not the first, but we're really good at it, is ASR, so ancestral sequence reconstruction, which is quite a complicated technique, but using a lot of computational power, we're able to sample a lot of sequence space of different proteins, so that we're able to come up with a protein that has best function and stability. And that's the technique that we've employed in this instance. So we took a wild type enzyme. People have found enzymes in the wild that are able to break down plastic. It's very slow. It takes days. The enzyme is not very stable. And we use this computational technique, ASR, to create enzymes that are able to work on minute scale, and are also very stable.
That's fantastic.
That's really cool. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're right. So moving on. So what sort of people do you have in your team? What degrees and roles do they have? Kind of for people that Angus and I that are trying to get into the workforce. What skills should we be trying to acquire?
We got a really broad skill set within Samsara, and each one of those skills are as important as the others. So, if you want to chunk it down into, we've got the corporate, we've got the science, we've got the engineering, and each one of those teams have a range of skills. So within the science, we have we have the polymer chemistry, the chemists themselves, the enzyme design. There's a whole range of skill sets within that science team, and science would probably represent at the moment, Rosie, the biggest of our teams. The engineers are on board, and these are the chemical process engineers. And at the end of the day, with plastics, you're dealing with chemicals, and if we're going to process 20,000 tonnes per annum, we need some pretty heavy duty engineering skills. And then, of course, you've got the corporate. So, you don't exist as a startup unless you can raise capital and have all of those other corporate skills to promote your business and to develop your business to the point where it's attractive for someone to invest. So it's a really broad range of skills that we're looking for. And I think, culturally, I think we're working pretty well together. I think it's a pretty good place to work. I think everyone enjoys it. And I think we'll continue to expand that team. I mean, we've got marketers coming on board. We've got finance. We've got 2 more chemists that we're looking to hire now. We've got chem process engineer coming on board soon, and it's rapidly expanding too. So we've gone from 0 to we're probably at about 20 now. I think we've just hired a new IP manager. As we become patent heavy, we're starting to find that that's drawing down a lot of resources. We need a dedicated individual, and we'll be at probably 34 people by early next year. So the team's growing very rapidly.
And within the science team, I guess, if you guys are thinking particularly about how your degree can be translatable into some sort of job, we have people, I guess, you inherently maybe think that you just need people who are specialists in enzymes, but we have organic chemists, analytical chemists, people who are just really good at growing up and expressing enzymes and proteins in the lab. We've got people whose specialty, like I talked about before, is computational methods. So there's a lot of different realms of science that go into making good enzymes that aren't just people who specialize in enzymes. And we've got people who have done PhDs and postdocs at amazing, universities, but we've also got people who have done their honours and are working for us, and they are just as invaluable as people who've got, fantastic, fancy credentials.
Awesome, thank you. Also, probably another good question for you, Rosie, being in the industry while also still doing, your PhD, what skills do you need in an industry job that you wouldn't necessarily need while studying? Like, what do you need to make that transition? What's the differences?
Tough question.
Yeah, I thought it was a tough question.
I definitely feel that my PhD is definitely enriched by doing it with Samsara, because I get a lot of exposure to other cool, like being in this interview today. Like, that's not because I'm doing a PhD, but because it's with Samsara, and Samsara does other cool things like, collaborate with SynBio teams, or like I've been part of the team that's helped tour investors around, that are people I would just have never met or had any exposure to had I just done a straight-laced PhD. So I guess being part of industry probably, I think, is being quite flexible in what you're going to do, because, it may not necessarily be a great public speaker, but if an investor wants to hear from a PhD student about their project, you've got to just come up with it on the spot and, smile and do it with confidence. Or, I guess that flexibility to put your skills to different tasks, not just academia.
Yeah, I think as a company as well, we're very and Rosie, she can confirm or deny this, but we want to make sure that everyone is involved in every aspect of the business. So Rosie comes into investor meetings. She talks to investors about what she's working on. She meets the politicians in the same way that everyone else. And I don't, and this is a conscious thing, I actually don't hold anything back from the team. They know exactly where I'm at with all the different aspects of the business, and I talk very openly so that they do get a flavour for everything else that goes on. They think I've only got this little weak humanities degree in business, so I've got to prove to them that I actually do something to add value to the business. So I'm very open, and and everyone in the company is encouraged to be really open about all aspects of the business. And I think that adds to, especially when you're doing your PhD, to your experience set, and helps you translate that into your next role or the role after that.
Absolutely. Yep, totally agree, Paul.
So the side projects are important.
Yeah, and
side
really
projects going. Yeah, cool.
Like, yeah, getting to meet cool people, do cool things that I would not have normally got to do. And I think the transparency within the team just makes everyone get along really well as well.
It would foster a good sort of company culture and
Absolutely
relationship.
Okay. So as Angus and I have only really started our life in the lab and stuff like that, how it's kind of hard for us to imagine how we would use the skills that we have now in the industry levels. What do you think are the biggest problems in translating basic lab work into practical use within the industry?
Me or you? I think Paul.
Yeah, look, I'll tell you my experience with academia, and that it's not a criticism of academia, but sometimes they find the solution before they find the problem. You might discover something really neat in the lab and think, "Oh, this is really interesting," and then you go and try and find a problem to solve with that neat piece of science, and it should be the other way around. It should be, let's identify the commercial problem and let's find the science that can resolve that problem. So I'm not diminishing the science. It remains the critical part of that. But I see a lot of people running down rabbit holes with ideas when they haven't thought through, okay, what's the problem? What's the size of the market? What are the economics of this? Is a customer going to be prepared to pay for it? They come up with these great ideas and there's no customer.
Yeah.
And unless you get all of those things sorted, you're never going to raise money. Because the harsh reality is venture capitalists are only here to do one thing. They're not here to be, altruistic. They're here to make money. And that's what venture capitalists do. And they've got bosses to answer to, and those bosses are the superannuation funds, and they don't get their next round of money unless they make a return on this round of money. So the science is critical, but it needs to be solving a problem in an economically sensible way. And when we started Samsara, science was last. Doesn't mean it's not the most important thing in the business, but it was the last piece of the puzzle that we put in place. So we'd identified the market, we'd identified what the problem was, we'd identified what people were prepared to pay to resolve that problem. So we knew the economic envelope that we needed to operate within to make a profit, and then we found the science to fit that envelope. And it was the bit that came as the last piece. So the most important piece at the end of the day, because if I don't have science, I don't have a solution, but we knew everything else around it, and we knew that people were prepared to pay. We talked to customers before we had the science. That, I think, is really important to understand when you're in a lab and you're working on something, is what problem am I solving?
Yeah.
Answers at the bottom of the page.
Yeah.
Not the top.
Yeah.
I think as well, like in our undergrads, we learned some really complex high-level science. But in industry, if your science is really complex, high level, and takes a lot of either a lot of people involved in it or techniques that maybe yield very small amount, it's not translatable. When I'm in the lab doing my PhD stuff, I keep it at the forefront of my mind that at some point, hopefully this reaction that I'm doing in a 50 ml round bottom flask is going to be done on megaliter scale or however big it's going to be. And if I'm adding a certain reagent or using a certain solvent, I have to picture that at some point there's going to be liters of that in a factory. Is that viable? If it's not, then is there really any point me doing that reaction?
That's a really good thing to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I honestly never would have ever thought about something like that.
Yeah.
Which kind of leads me on to my last question. There are times when much of what we do in research that can be very technical, as you just said, and hard to communicate the importance to people that are not within our field. You know, you wouldn't go out and say what you just said to me to obviously someone not doing what we do. What sort of challenges have you faced when trying to explain to people what you do outside of the industry that you work in?
You need to dumb it down. It's a skill to actually dumb it down and communicate it. I mean, you know, if we talk to investors about enzymes, we use this regularly. We talk about it being like a Pac-Man. So the little Pac-Man comes along and he snips the polymer chain. You end up with your two monomers. That people get that.
Yeah.
It's being able to actually think, okay, I'm talking to someone who hasn't got a science degree. How do I simplify this and get the point across? How do I simplify this and get them to understand just how important this science is? And we use that Pac-Man analogy regularly, and it just sets off a light bulb in people's head, and they get it. So you need to develop that skill so that, you know, you can take your complicated science. Now, I got no idea how they come up with these enzymes. I have absolutely no idea. But I know what they do. And that's all I need to know to communicate that to someone else.
Yep. Yeah, it's hard. And I think it's very easy for us even to use terms that other people don't know. I mean, enzyme. A lot of people don't know what an enzyme is, or a protein. You know, they might be familiar with protein powder. That's basically it. You know, you've got to go really, really simplified, and then you can get a little bit more complicated if people seem like they're following. I mean, Colin is like king of analogies. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't.
He's good. He's good in dumbing it down. You know, he uses the apple juice versus eating an apple one as solid and liquid scenarios for the enzyme to work on. So he does that very well. And if you can develop a skill like that, it's fantastic.
Yeah, I'd love to be able to communicate with my family about what I do in the lab. So something to look into.
And I think as well, like, one of the most important things is just to keep it really big picture. I mean, a lot of people do this poorly, I think, when they do a seminar, is that people care about why, and like, why should we care, or why are you doing this? That resonates with people a lot. The how, people actually don't really care, and they don't really need to know. But the big picture is important. Otherwise, no one is interested.
That's another very good point. It's understanding the meaning behind somebody's research, which is very, very engaging. We've noticed from some seminar talks we've listened in on.
Yeah, the results are the worst part of any seminar talk. Hardly anyone in the room will know what's going on. So, like, you know, don't linger on it, I guess.
Thank you.
That's all my questions.
Yeah, I think that's about that.
Do you have any further questions? Like anything that popped into your head?
No.
Okay, I think more last three.
Yeah. Yeah, that's everything. Cool.
That's all
Got it.
questions.
Thanks.
We just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We've learned a lot. This was really great to sit in on and have a chat to you guys.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I don't think I've spoken to you guys before, so it was pretty cool.
Right.
You're welcome.
No problems. Well, keep us in the loop, keep us up to date.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Progress. Very interested to see how it goes. If you want help, reach out.
Cool.
Back on anything, reach out. We're happy to do that.
We have a video coming out soon. We're about to drop
I'm very excited.
our video, so we can make sure that you guys see that. And then we'll keep you updated with our research, and we'll let you know how we're going and if we can make anything work. And then I suppose we should think about the question to the answer that we're making.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
This is great.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right. Ciao.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to our podcast. Check out our social media links below.